Imagine a world where the government sells off its state-owned assets to private investors, resulting in the rise of powerful and wealthy individuals who dominate the economy and influence politics. This scenario is not just fiction, but the reality that unfolded in Russia after its privatization process in the 90s. Now, with Kenya embarking on its privatization process, many are wondering whether the country will be able to avoid the pitfalls that plagued Russia's privatization, or whether history will repeat itself. The potential risks and benefits of privatization in Kenya remain a mystery, but one thing is certain: the outcome will have significant implications for the country's economy and political landscape. Join me as I dive deeper into this issue, examining Russia's privatization experiences and discussing the implications of Kenya's proposed privatization process.
The year was 1992 and new business opportunities were emerging from the ashes of the Soviet Union. The president of the new Russian Federation, Boris Yeltsin, started privatizing companies that had been under communist state control. It was as if the whole country was up for sale. The government issued millions of these vouchers that Russians could use to buy shares in companies.
The Soviet Union was a communist state that was formed in 1922 and lasted until its dissolution in 1991. The fall of the Soviet Union was a result of a combination of factors including political, economic, and social changes. One of the major factors that contributed to the fall of the Soviet Union was the economic stagnation that had set in during the 80s. The Soviet economy was heavily reliant on the production of heavy industry and the military, which were increasingly unprofitable and inefficient. Another major factor was the political changes that were taking place in the Soviet Union. In the 80s, a reformist leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, came to power and began to implement policies of openness and restructuring. These policies aimed to democratize the Soviet system and modernize the economy. However, they also led to increased political and social unrest, as well as loss of control by the Communist Party over society. The fall of the Soviet Union was influenced by external factors such as arms race with the United States and its allies, and the pressures of the Cold War. The Soviet Union's military spending had drained the country's resources and weakened its economy. In 1991, the Soviet Union was dissolved and replaced by the Russian Federation. The collapse of the Soviet Union marked the end of the Cold War and beginning of a new era in international relationship.
More than 15,000 companies were privatized between 1992 and 1994, and as these companies grew, so did the wealth of their owners. And that's how the oligarchs were born.
The rise of the oligarch in post-Soviet Russia is tied to the country's transition from a centrally planned economy to a market-based system. The term oligarch refers to a small group of individuals who wield significant economic and political power in a society. Some of these individuals who came to be known as oligarchs were able to amass significant wealth and influence by acquiring state assets at bargain prices and building large industries and financial multinationals. The oligarchs were able to accumulate wealth and power through a variety of means, including insider deals, asset stripping, and political connections. Many oligarchs established close ties with political leaders and were able to influence government policy in their favor, often at the expense of the broader public. The oligarchs' rise to power was also facilitated by the weakness and democratic institutions in post-Soviet Russia, which allowed them to wield outsized influence over the country's political and economic systems. Oligarchs in Russia are known for their extravagant lifestyles and often purchase a wide range of luxury items. Some of the most commonly purchased luxury items by oligarchs in Russia include private jets and yachts, which they use for business and personal travel, own multiple luxury homes and apartments both in Russia and in other countries. They own cars such as Ferraris, Lamborghinis, and Rolls-Royce. And finally, jewelry and watches, which are often encrusted with diamonds and other precious stones. The privatization process in Russia in the 90s was marked by widespread corruption, cronyism, and concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a small group of well-connected individuals, often referred as to oligarchs. This process was characterized by the transfer of state-owned assets to private ownership, with little oversight or regulation, resulting in the creation of vast fortunes for a select few individuals. Similarly, the recent declaration by the Kenyan President to privatize state assets without parliamentary approval raises concerns about the potential for similar outcomes. Without proper oversight and regulation, such privatization process could lead to the concentration of wealth and power in the hands of a few well-connected individuals rather than benefiting the wider population.
Reality is we have to privatize some of our universities. And I am talking to investors, international investors, who are willing and ready to come and partner with our university.
Mmesema last week kwamba kampuni za serikali zitakuwa privatized, na ndani ya hizo kampuni tuko na kampuni zetu za miwa, Nzoia Sugar Company and Mumia Sugar Company. I beg you, why are you helping criminals? Let them work hard the way our farmers work hard.
The Kenyan economy relies on a range of sectors including agriculture, manufacturing services, and tourism. The Kenyan government's decision to privatize state-owned assets such as sugar companies, the Port Consolidated Bank, the Kenya Pipeline Company, and public universities, among others, could have significant impacts on the economy and the public. Privatization of these assets can lead to increased efficiency, innovation, and economic growth, as private investors may be more motivated to invest in these assets and improve their performance. However, there are also potential risks associated with privatization, particularly if this is not done in a transparent and accountable manner. The transfer of state-owned assets to private ownership can lead to increased inequality, reduced access to essential services for the public, and potential negative impacts on workers and communities. Therefore, any proposal to privatize state-owned assets in Kenya would need to be carefully considered and debated, with proper oversight and regulation to prevent corruption and ensure that the process benefits the wider population, rather than a selective few individuals or entities. It could also need to be structured in a way that balances the benefits of private ownership with the need to ensure public access to essential services and resources. Furthermore, it's important to ensure that proceeds from the privatization of these assets are used to support government programs and services rather than being misused or diverted for personal gain. Overall, the success of any privatization process in Kenya will depend on the government's ability to effectively manage the process and ensure that it benefits the public as a whole.
First of all, we must know, who is this investor? What are the terms of this privatization? What impact will it have on the workforce in public universities?
The moment you shift education to private hands, it then means only very few will afford to get that education.
The lack of transparency and public accountability in the privatization process could also lead to corruption and cronyism, with state assets being transferred to politically connected individuals or entities for personal gain, rather than for the benefit of the Kenyan people. It's also important to have a strong legal and regulatory framework in place to govern the privatization process, including clear guidelines for asset valuation, bidding process, and transfer of ownership and management. Ultimately, the success of the privatization process will depend on the ability of leaders to act in public interest, and on the strength and effectiveness of the institutional and regulatory framework that governs the process. Thank you for joining me as I explore this issue of privatization of state-owned assets in Kenya and compared it to Russia's privatization experiences. As we have seen, privatization can have both positive and negative consequences, and it's important to carefully consider the risks and benefits before embarking on such a significant change. I hope that the discussion has provided you with valuable insights and a deep understanding of the complex issue. If you've enjoyed this video and found it informative, please consider subscribing to my channel and giving thumbs up. Your support helps to create more content like this and reach a wider audience. Leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching.